It was a quiet afternoon on a private training floor. No flashing lights, no cameras, no hype. Just the soft echo of footsteps and the low hum of air conditioning. Chuck Norris stood near a heavy bag, dressed in simple training clothes, stretching calmly like a man with nowhere to prove himself. His movements were slow, controlled, almost relaxed. To anyone watching, he looked like an ordinary older martial artist, focused, disciplined, and completely unbothered. Across the room, Bolo Yeung entered with confidence that filled the space before his voice ever did. Broad shoulders, powerful stance, eyes scanning the room like he owned it. A few people stopped what they were doing. Bolo had a reputation, strength, intimidation, dominance. He noticed Chuck almost immediately. Bolo watched for a moment, a faint smirk forming. An older man, quiet, no entourage, no show. He leaned toward someone nearby and muttered, just loud enough to be heard, "That's Chuck Norris? He doesn't look so tough anymore." Chuck didn't react. He continued stretching, breathing slow and steady, as if the comment never existed. That calm, it bothered Bolo. Bolo took a few steps closer. The room felt different now, heavier. People sensed something coming. A challenge without words had already begun. Bolo's presence was loud, but Chuck's silence was louder. "You still training?" Bolo asked, tone half mocking, half curious. "We're just here for nostalgia." Chuck finally looked up. His eyes were calm. No anger, no ego, just awareness. "I train," he replied simply. 2 words, nothing more. That response only fueled Bolo's confidence. He laughed softly. "Times change," he said. "Legends fade." A few heads turned. Someone whispered, "This doesn't feel right." Another person quietly reached for their phone, not to record violence, but because moments like this, they don't happen twice. Chuck stood up straight now, rolling his shoulders once, still relaxed. He didn't step forward. He didn't step back. He stayed exactly where he was. The silence stretched. Seconds passed, and in that silence, something was clear. Bolo Yeung thought he was about to test an old man. He had no idea. He was standing in front of discipline forged over decades. What Bolo did next turned a quiet room into a pressure chamber. The tension in the room was thick, almost tangible. Chuck Norris remained calm, his presence alone commanding attention, but Bolo Yeung was not about to be intimidated. He flexed his arms, shifted his stance, and started pacing. Every step he took echoed like a drumbeat, drawing more eyes. The casual observers now formed a small circle around them, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Bolo's voice cut through the quiet. "You're Chuck Norris, right?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've heard about your old moves. But are you still any good? I bet you can't even keep up with me anymore." The crowd held its breath. Some were longtime martial arts fans, some just stumbled into the scene, but all felt the same mix of curiosity and unease. Phones were subtly raised. No one wanted to miss a single second of what could be a legendary confrontation. Chuck's response was calm, measured, and disarmingly simple. "I'm still training." That was it. 2 words. No arrogance. No ego. Just truth. The room felt heavier. People whispered to each other. "He doesn't need to prove anything." And that scares Bolo. Bolo's smirk widened, but it was tinged with impatience. "Training? That's cute," he sneered. "But this isn't a friendly practice. I challenge you. Right now. Let's see if the legends are real." For a brief moment, there was dead silence. Every eye was on Chuck Norris. Every heartbeat seemed louder. The energy shifted from casual observation to something electrifying. You could feel the collective anticipation. Chuck didn't rush, didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at Bolo with a calm intensity that felt almost physical. And yet, he didn't answer the challenge in words. The silence itself was the response. Bolo leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Chuck could hear. "I hope you're ready, because I won't hold back. Not for you. Not for anyone." Chuck blinked slowly, then returned to stretching slightly, still unshaken. It was as if Bolo's threats bounced off an invisible shield. People in the circle started murmuring. Some whispered, "He's not scared." Others said, "I don't know. There's something about that calm." The tension was mounting. Every second dragged the anticipation higher. Bolo's frustration grew. He stomped lightly, pacing faster now. "You're old," he said, trying to bait him. "I've fought legends before. I've beaten the strongest. Don't think you're different." Chuck finally straightened, his eyes locking with Bolo's. He didn't shout, didn't react aggressively. He simply nodded slightly, signaling, "I understand you. I see your challenge. But this is not about ego." The subtle confidence was unnerving. Bolo's smirk faltered for a moment, though he quickly masked it. "You're calm," he said, a hint of doubt creeping into his voice. "You shouldn't be calm. You should be afraid." The crowd chuckled softly, but even that laughter sounded nervous. Everyone sensed the energy in the room was about to snap. Phones were ready. Some people whispered where they were watching from, typing into live comments. "Watching from New York. London checking in. This is insane. Manila here. Can't believe I'm seeing this in person." Bolo noticed the crowd's attention, trying to leverage it. "See this," he shouted. "Everyone's watching. Don't make them bored. Prove you're still a fighter." Chuck didn't reply. He simply moved into a neutral stance, relaxed, ready, patient. And the patience itself was almost weaponized. Every second Chuck stayed calm, every inch of silence, made Bolo's frustration grow. Bolo clenched his fists. "Enough talking. Let's go," he yelled. His tone was now aggressive, demanding action. Chuck tilted his head slightly, almost contemplative. Then with a slow exhale, he moved, not fast, not violent, just shifting his weight. The subtle movement alone was enough to make the room hold its collective breath. It was a quiet warning, a signal that he was ready, but only if Bolo really wanted to learn the hard way. The room went completely still. Phones hovered, eyes widened, and in that moment, you could feel a single truth crystallize. Bolo Yeung thought he was about to test an old man. He had no idea he was standing in front of decades of discipline, mastery, and calm precision. The challenge was made. The stakes were unspoken, but absolute. And the audience, both in the room and online, was already mentally on the edge, waiting for what would happen next. Where are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments. Let's see how global this showdown is. Seconds from now, Bolo Yeung's arrogance will start cracking, and the silent storm in Chuck Norris will finally make itself felt. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. What started as casual curiosity now felt like a pressure chamber, each heartbeat amplified, each breath heavier. Bolo Yeung's arrogance had begun to crack, even if he refused to admit it. Every eye in the circle was glued to the two men, the challenger and the calm veteran. The tension was almost physical, like static electricity hovering in the air. Bolo stomped his foot again, fists clenched. "You're dodging, old man," he shouted. "This is your moment. Show everyone what you've got." His voice carried authority, aggression, and desperation all at once. A few people in the room instinctively stepped back, sensing the potential for disaster. Others raised their phones, hands trembling slightly, eager to capture the drama. Chuck Norris didn't move toward him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even flinch. His eyes, however, were sharp and focused, assessing every subtle movement, every tiny shift in Bolo's posture. Chuck's calm was almost unbearable for Bolo, whose energy demanded recognition, confrontation, domination. The contrast between the two men was striking, one fueled by impatience and ego, the other by decades of experience and disciplined control. "You're not taking this seriously," Bolo growled, circling slowly. "I've fought stronger men than you. You're too old to keep up. Admit it." Chuck simply breathed slowly, each exhale steady, measured. His calm was deliberate, almost hypnotic. Bolo felt the pull, an inexplicable sense that his moves, his threats, his ego, none of it mattered to this man. And that unnerved him more than any punch ever could. The crowd's whispers grew louder. "He's not moving. He's not even reacting. Look at the way he stands. Like he's in control of everything. Do you think Bolo realizes who he's messing with?" The murmurs fed into the tension, a quiet pressure that weighed on the room. Bolo's chest heaved as he tried to summon confidence. He raised his fists, shadowing Chuck with a series of quick feints, trying to bait a reaction. Chuck didn't move. The patience itself was a weapon. Time seemed to stretch. Seconds felt like minutes. People instinctively leaned closer to see what would happen next. Some whispered where they were watching from. Watching from Sydney, and this is insane. Toronto here, my hands are shaking. Manila in the house. Can't believe the silence is this intense. Bolo's frustration became palpable. He tried a sharp step forward, but Chuck shifted slightly. Just a subtle weight transfer, and Bolo's momentum faltered. The subtlety of Chuck's movement spoke volumes. He didn't need to strike. Just the display of balance, awareness, and readiness was enough to assert dominance. Bolo blinked, momentarily shocked. His ego, built on aggression and physical strength, had never encountered a calm this profound. He raised his fists again, harder this time, circling faster, as if force alone could break Chuck's composure. But Chuck didn't flinch, didn't react with anger or haste. His patience made Beyond the Lookout more reckless. Sweat beaded on Bolo's forehead, not from exertion, but from the realization that he was trapped in a psychological game he didn't understand. Every move he made was anticipated, every action countered silently. He could feel the crowd's energy shifting. They were no longer just spectators. They were witnesses to something far beyond a mere fight. Bolo's voice cracked slightly. "Why aren't you fighting back?" he shouted. His tone was now a mix of desperation and disbelief. Chuck finally spoke, low and calm. "Strength is not always shown by striking first." The words cut deeper than any physical blow. The silence that followed was deafening. The room collectively held its breath. Bolo's aggression faltered. The arrogance that had filled him moments ago now wavered. If you were in Chuck's place, would you fight back or stay calm like him? Comment below, back and index pointing down, and let's see what people really would do. The seconds stretched again. Chuck's eyes never left Bolo's. Bolo's fists wavered. His stance faltered. Every subtle shift in Chuck's posture was a mental trap, silently forcing Beyond the Lookout to confront his own impatience, his own arrogance. The audience could feel the storm building, not in punches, but in presence, in restraint, in pure mastery. And then, just as Beyond the Lookout prepared for what he thought would be the decisive move, Chuck's calm presence hit the tipping point. The tension in the room had peaked, and Bolo's confidence, once towering, now trembled under the weight of one man's silent dominance. The silent standoff had reached its zenith. The next moments would not just decide the outcome of this challenge. They would expose the real power of patience, discipline, and psychological control. Someone in the crowd is about to whisper a name that will change everything, and Bolo Yeung still has no idea what he's really facing. The room had grown unnaturally quiet, yet every eye was glued to the two men at the center. Bolo Yeung's fists trembled slightly, though he tried to mask it with aggressive posturing. Chuck Norris, calm and measured, had not moved aggressively at all, yet the entire energy of the room had shifted. Someone near the back, a young martial arts enthusiast who had watched decades of classic fights, squinted at Chuck. He whispered softly to the person next to him, "Wait, that's Chuck Norris." The words seemed almost too casual for what they implied. But as the whisper spread, the room's atmosphere changed instantly. Heads turned, eyes widened. Some people gasped quietly. "No way. It's really him," someone murmured. "The legend. Chuck Norris himself." Bolo Yeung didn't hear it first. He was too focused on his own frustration, too caught up in the imagined victory. But as the whispers grew louder, he finally caught snippets. "That's Chuck Norris. The world champion, the movie legend, the martial arts master." Even the casual spectators who had stumbled upon this private gathering started whispering in awe. Their phones were lifted higher, hands trembling slightly. Comments began flowing on the live stream that a few audience members had started. "Watching from Los Angeles. Holy, it is him. London here. This is insane. The silence is unreal." Manila checking in. Bolo has no idea who he's messing with. Bolo's confident smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. He looked around, noticing the sudden respect in the crowd's eyes. The whispers were not just awe, they were fear. A realization crept into the edges of his mind. He might have underestimated his opponent. Who is he? Bolo muttered under his breath, a twinge of doubt in his voice. The crowd, now fully aware, could barely contain itself. Every subtle movement Chuck made now carried weight. A single blink, a small shift of stance, seemed like a calculated demonstration of decades of experience. Chuck Norris remained still, exuding confidence. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His calm, quiet presence conveyed mastery in a way that Bolo could not match, no matter how much he flexed or threatened. The tension had now shifted from Bolo's challenge to the mental game, a psychological dominance that only Chuck could wield without lifting a finger. Bolo tried to reassert control. Legends or not, I've faced masters before. You won't scare me, he shouted. But even as he spoke, his voice lacked conviction. Every whisper of Chuck's identity had chipped away at his certainty. The crowd sensed it too. Someone near the front, barely containing their excitement, whispered, "This is history. We're watching a master versus an arrogant challenger. And Chuck isn't even fighting yet." Chuck tilted his head slightly, just enough for Bolo to notice. His eyes were calm, but piercing. The subtle, unspoken message was clear. I see everything. You could try, but I am prepared. Bolo's fists clenched harder. He tried to focus, but the whispers and the sudden shift in energy were impossible to ignore. The room had become a pressure cooker of expectation, suspense, and unspoken respect. Bolo realized that the challenge was no longer about physical dominance. It was about psychological and emotional control, and Chuck Norris had already claimed it without a single blow. The crowd started recording more aggressively, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Comments flooded the stream. If I were Bolo, I'd be running right now. This is insane. Chuck hasn't even moved, and Bolo looks like he's losing already. Watching from Tokyo, this is peak tension. Bolo's eyes flicked around. He noticed the change in the crowd. People were no longer merely observing. They were mentally aligning themselves with Chuck, their respect obvious in their posture, in the subtle nods, in the awe-filled silence. The whispers of Chuck's identity had turned the tables completely. A subtle smirk appeared on Chuck's face, not out of arrogance, but from quiet acknowledgement. He understood the dynamic now. He didn't need to speak. The power of recognition and legacy was working in his favor. Bolo Yeung, meanwhile, was beginning to grasp the magnitude of the man in front of him, and it terrified him more than any physical strike could have. The tension reached its tipping point. The next move, whether spoken, hinted, or physical, would define the outcome of this encounter. But for the first time, it was clear Bolo Yeung's confidence had been shaken, and the whispers of Chuck Norris's identity had done what no threat, no gesture, and no punch could. Now, Chuck is ready to speak, and when he does, the silence will hit harder than any strike. Bolo Yeung's moment of regret is approaching. The room felt suspended in time. Every eye remained glued to the two men, every heartbeat echoing the unspoken tension. Bolo Yeung's bravado, once towering and unshakable, had begun to waver under the weight of Chuck Norris's calm dominance. He clenched his fists tighter, trying to regain control, but the whispers of the crowd and the recognition of Chuck's legacy gnawed at him like a subtle but persistent tide. "You've been quiet long enough," Bolo growled, attempting to provoke action. "Speak or step aside. Show me what a legend really is." Chuck Norris exhaled slowly, eyes scanning Bolo's movements with an almost surgical precision. His tone, when he finally spoke, was quiet yet commanding. "Strength is not proven by arrogance, but by control." A hush fell over the room. Those words hit harder than any physical strike could have. The crowd leaned forward, sensing that the climax of this standoff was approaching. Chuck wasn't boasting, he wasn't threatening. He was demonstrating the kind of mastery that transcends mere muscle and power. Bolo's jaw tightened. "Control? You think words scare me? I've faced the strongest men alive," he barked, shifting into a more aggressive stance. His shadow boxing and feints became faster, more exaggerated, a desperate attempt to reclaim dominance. Chuck's eyes, calm and unwavering, followed every movement. And then it happened, a subtle shift of weight, a slight pivot of the foot, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. It was one move, silent, invisible to most, yet devastatingly effective. Bolo, in mid-feint, lost his balance for a fraction of a second. That moment, barely noticeable, was all Chuck needed. No punch, no blow, no rage, just pure mastery. The crowd gasped. Phones trembled in hands, some filming, some just frozen, capturing the moment as it unfolded. The tension broke like a dam. Bolo stumbled slightly, his arrogance colliding with reality. Chuck stepped back, maintaining perfect balance, his expression calm but authoritative. Every eye in the room now recognized a fundamental truth. Physical strength alone does not define mastery. Mental discipline and control do. Bolo's confidence, once unshakable, had been undermined in an instant, not by violence, but by precision, patience, and the weight of reputation. The silence that followed was deafening. Bolo's chest heaved, frustration and disbelief battling within him. He looked at Chuck, eyes wide, trying to process what had just happened. The whispers began again, louder this time. Did you see that? He didn't even touch him. One move, and Bolo's arrogance is gone. Watching from New York, this is insane. London here. That subtlety just humiliated him. Bolo's mind raced. He realized that he had underestimated the calm, the patience, and the experience standing before him. He had relied on aggression and reputation, but Chuck had shown him that true mastery comes without fury, without haste, and without ego. Chuck finally spoke again, calm, measured. Do not mistake aggression for strength. Respect is earned, not demanded. The crowd collectively exhaled. Some whispered to each other in awe. Others typed comments into live streams. I've never seen control like this. This is peak discipline. Bolo should have never challenged him. Watching from Manila, that one move said it all. Bolo's shoulders slumped slightly. He had been humbled, not physically, but mentally and emotionally. He understood, at last, that he had been defeated not by a strike, but by awareness, patience, and unmatched skill. Chuck remained still, not gloating, not mocking. His presence alone had delivered the lesson. Bolo's arrogance had met its match, and the moral peak of this confrontation had been reached. The room was silent, yet every heartbeat, every gasp, every whispered comment bore witness to the lesson. True strength is calm, precise, and controlled. Have you ever underestimated someone because of their age, silence, or appearance? Comment below, back-end index pointing down, and share your story. Let's see who else has learned this lesson the hard way. The room now hung on the precipice of the next moment. Bolo Yeung had experienced regret, but Chuck Norris had yet to allow the full realization to settle. The whispers of admiration for Chuck's discipline and mastery began spreading among the crowd. The tension had shifted completely. The challenger's bravado was gone, replaced with respect and a subtle, humbling fear. The revelation of Chuck's true mastery is about to become undeniable, and Bolo's regret will reach its peak. Seconds from now, the crowd will witness the ultimate display of calm power. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. Every eye was fixed on the two men at the center, every whisper amplified in the charged silence. Bolo Yeung's fists had tightened, his chest heaving, not from physical exertion, but from the dawning realization that he had miscalculated. The arrogance that had carried him confidently into the challenge now wavered like a candle in the wind. Chuck Norris remained calm, perfectly balanced, his expression serene yet commanding. He had not moved aggressively. He had not struck a blow. And yet, the entire dynamic had shifted. Bolo, once towering with confidence, now looked unsteady, a hint of panic creeping into his eyes. A subtle shift occurred in the crowd. Someone in the back, barely containing their excitement, spoke up. Did anyone else notice how Bolo is faltering? He's losing composure. Others murmured agreement. Phones zoomed in on the subtle movements, Bolo's unstable stance, the twitch of his jaw, the rapid blink of eyes that betrayed disbelief. The whispers grew louder. He's realizing it. The calm is the real power. Watching from Toronto, that subtle shift by Chuck just changed everything. Los Angeles here. This is next-level control. Bolo tried to regain composure, forcing his stance into a show of strength. This doesn't mean anything, he barked, but even his voice quivered slightly. He threw a few exaggerated feints, a desperate attempt to reclaim dominance. Yet each move was anticipated, neutralized by Chuck's simple, fluid presence. Then it happened. A fellow observer, someone who had been silently watching from the sidelines, leaned forward and whispered just loud enough for Bolo to hear. That's not just Chuck Norris. He's a master of decades. Every move, every breath, he's trained for this. You're standing in front of a living legend. Bolo's eyes widened, a flicker of disbelief flashing across his face. The realization hit him fully. The man he had challenged was no ordinary opponent. He wasn't just strong. He was disciplined, controlled, and utterly untouchable. His calm presence had outmaneuvered Bolo's aggression before a single strike had landed. The crowd erupted, not in cheering, but in audible awe. Every whisper carried a mix of admiration and respect. He didn't even need to fight. This is insane. Bolo's arrogance is gone in seconds. Manila checking in. Chuck just humbled him without throwing a punch. Bolo stumbled slightly, his balance shaken. He took a step back, finally acknowledging the unspoken truth. He had underestimated Chuck Norris. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. His pride, his carefully constructed persona, was shattered. Chuck stepped forward ever so slightly, not to strike, but simply to assert presence. His gaze locked on a Bolo, calm, unyielding. There was no need for words. The room understood. Bolo had lost, not by force, but by sheer mastery, patience, and discipline. Bolo's shoulders slumped. He exhaled sharply, a mixture of frustration, shame, and reluctant respect. He forced a weak nod toward Chuck, acknowledging defeat without the need for theatrics. The crowd responded immediately. Phones shot into the air, capturing the moment. Murmurs turned into applause, whispers into cheers. People typed comments across live streams. Respect earned, not demanded. That's real power. Bolo Yeung humbled in seconds. Incredible. New York here. Watching legends in action, mind blown. London checking in. That silence was louder than any fight. Chuck didn't gloat. He didn't mock. He simply nodded, maintaining his calm aura, his presence alone delivering the lesson. The silent power, the controlled mastery, the moral victory, all of it had been enough to humble beyond the lookout Yeung instantly. Have you ever underestimated someone because of their calm, age, or silence? Comment below, backhand index pointing down. We want to see who else has learned the hard way. As the energy in the room shifted, the lesson became clear. True strength is not in aggression, noise, or arrogance. It is in control, patience, and mastery of oneself. Bolo Yeung had learned this in seconds. The whispers, the awe, and the silent acknowledgement of the crowd had cemented the moment as unforgettable. And in that moment, Chuck Norris became more than just a fighter. He became a living example of discipline and mental dominance, a lesson to everyone in the room. Bolo Yeung, once the confident challenger, had no choice but to respect the man who had humbly, silently, and utterly outmaneuvered him without a single strike landing. The story doesn't end here. Videos are going viral, reactions are flooding in, and Chuck's lesson about calm strength and true mastery is spreading worldwide. The room had finally exhaled. What started as tension and anticipation had transformed into awe and respect. Phones captured every subtle movement, whispers, and reactions. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire, first within the small crowd, then across social media platforms, where millions would soon watch, rewind, and discuss every detail. Bolo Yeung stood quietly, a mixture of humility and disbelief on his face. The arrogance that had propelled him to challenge Chuck Norris was now replaced with recognition of true mastery. Chuck, still calm and composed, quietly stepped aside. He didn't celebrate. He didn't gloat. The lesson had already been delivered. Strength is quiet, discipline is visible, and respect is earned, not demanded. Within hours, videos were uploaded across platforms. Hashtags began trending. Hashtag Chuck Norris Mastery, hashtag Calm Strength, hashtag Respect Legends. Comments poured in from around the world. Watching from New York, this is insane. He didn't even hit him. London here. Bolo got humbled by silence and calm mastery. Manila checking in. That patience, that presence, unbelievable. Paris here. Real strength isn't anger or violence. It's discipline and control. The clips went viral not because of a fight, but because of a lesson in mental and emotional mastery. Every pause, every subtle shift in weight, every calm exhale became iconic. Chuck's approach had taught viewers worldwide a lesson few martial artists or celebrities ever could. You do not need to strike to dominate. You do not need noise to be heard. True power lies in calm, precision, and moral authority. Even martial arts communities and professional commentators weighed in. Analysts praised Chuck's ability to control the environment and influence beyond the Lookout Yeung's mental state without violence. Articles appeared across blogs and sports sites, headlines echoing the awe of the moment. Chuck Norris silences Bolo Yeung with one move. Calm over chaos. The mastery of Chuck Norris. Lessons in discipline. How one man outclassed another without a punch. Meanwhile, social media users shared reaction videos discussing the psychological dominance Chuck had displayed. Fans debated, paused the clips, and analyzed every micro-movement. The story was no longer just about a confrontation. It had become a lesson in patience, discipline, and respect that resonated globally. Bolo Yeung, once the challenger full of ego, had been humbled. But even he, later in interviews, admitted respect for Chuck's approach. He spoke about the power of calmness, discipline, and silent mastery, showing that the lesson transcended physical strength. It was a lesson in character, humility, and mental control. The incident also inspired audiences worldwide to reflect on their own behavior. People shared stories of moments when they had underestimated someone, when patience and calm had triumphed over arrogance. Chuck's silent lesson became a mirror, a reminder that respect and mastery are not measured by aggression, but by composure, skill, and moral clarity. If you believe that true strength is calm, precise, and earned through discipline, not ego, type respect in the comments below. Share your city or country and subscribe for more inspiring stories of courage, discipline, and mastery. The story of Chuck Norris and Bolo Yeung would continue to be shared, analyzed, and celebrated for years to come. What made it unforgettable wasn't a fight, but a demonstration of supreme self-control, psychological mastery, and moral victory. Millions witnessed a masterclass in how quiet confidence and patience can outshine arrogance and aggression in mere seconds. And while Bolo Yeung left with lessons learned, the world learned something far greater. Real power is silent, precise, and deeply respected. The video ended. Comments exploded. Shares multiplied. And Chuck Norris, calm as ever, walked away, not as a man seeking glory, but as a living lesson in discipline, humility, and unmatched mastery.